podcast. On Fleetwood Mac, my roommate's dead. Fungus fermentation. Another Wonka reboot, JFK's assassination.
It's not my favorite topic, just my brain's current fixation.
Hyperfocus.
Hyperfocus, a neurodivergent podcast.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Hyperfocus, a neurodivergent podcast. I am here with Deborah Davidson, a New York City-based producer and primatologist. Did I say that?
Yeah, primatologist.
Primatologist.
Yeah.
I was like so close. Primates, duh. So yes, in a little bit, we're going to talk about your hyperfixation on primates, which I'm so excited to talk about because they're one of my favorite animals at the zoo. And later, we'll get into my hyperfocus, which is, and just like that, particularly Aiden and Carrie's relationship. But first, before we get into all of that, I like to start off the podcast letting you share a bit about your experience being neurodivergent.
So I was diagnosed with OCD when I was 8 years old, and I'm 28 now, for context. So I've lived more of my life with the diagnosis than without it. And honestly, how it shows up for me as like an adult is so different than how it shows up for me as a child. Mm-hmm. And it can be really difficult because there's not a lot of resources for how that happens and changes. Like, how does a diagnosis change from childhood to adulthood? What does that look like? And I'm sure, just like everything, it's so individual. Depends what the diagnosis is. You know, like, again, I'm talking about it through the lens of like OCD and anxiety. It can be really isolating, you know, when you deal with a diagnosis that you felt comfortable with and took the time to accept and really chew on and did that as a child, which is really hard because most people don't have a childhood diagnosis or most people aren't talking about it. And it was incredibly isolating as a kid. It took me a really long time to like be okay with it. And then into adulthood to have to redefine the terms of what it is because the symptoms that I had that got me the diagnosis is not what I have now.
How did your symptoms change as a child to an adult?
As a child, it was pretty straightforward OCD. The diagnosis I got was she's having compulsions. It's getting in the way of life as a child.
Yeah.
You can't send a kid to school that is erasing everything that they're writing down multiple times, not able to walk through doorways, that sort of thing. So that's when I got treated. I got put on Prozac, and it saved my life. I was able to function, quote unquote, normally for the entire time that I went through school. So that was 8 years old, and I went to grad school. I could do what I needed to do. I showed up. Everything made sense until the boundaries of my existence shifted, my environment shifted, everything shifted. And that is kind of like the neat story version of how, you know, I look back in retrospect and see the differences in what my diagnoses are. And it's hard because when you receive treatment as an adult, other people are taking care of you. It's an immense privilege.
Yeah.
My parents had the immense privilege to be able to afford to get me this high level care. The hardness of dealing with it as an adult is that you have these changing things and you're kind of almost thrust into this like childlike state of I need help, but you have to do it for yourself.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily have the resources of your parents.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it adds this whole other layer. And I would say that what I deal with now as an adult is much more anxiety related in terms of straightforward OCD and like the kinds of OCD or the flavor, you want to be whimsical with the language, is much more internal. And thank God, having compulsions is really difficult to deal with. I'm really glad that I did make the decision after being on Prozac for 20 years to wean off of it with the care of a psychiatrist and not cutting off cold turkey. That's incredibly dangerous.
Don't do
and
that.
I don't recommend, literally don't do that.
I have done that before. It's bad. Don't do that.
It's really bad. Don't do it. Your body will react. There is no scenario in which it's like,
a good idea.
Yeah. So please don't do that. But this January was the first time that I was going unmedicated since I was 8 years old.
Wow.
Thank God the compulsions didn't come back, which was my major fear. And there was really no comfort of any literature or even psychiatrists that could be like, nobody could give me any sort of certainty. But what I experience now is different flavors of like mental compulsions to soothe my dysregulation. And also the literature says, you know, like, oh, the Prozac will be out of your system within 3 months, right? But I've consulted different doctors and different professionals in different fields. You know, you got to give yourself a year.
Yeah.
At least to totally reacclimate. And I was on 80 milligrams.
Yeah. And it's your brain too. It has a lot of time to adjust. Like it has
a lot of time to adjust.
Well, are you ready to get into your hyperfixation of primates?
Yes. Okay. And I actually turned my hyperfixation into a degree.
That's amazing.
The major was anthropology, and specifically it was biological anthropology, which is the study of people. Taxonomically, we're primates. past, present, future. Within that, there's subdisciplines, but I was specifically obsessed with monkeys.
Yeah.
I loved animals. I was specifically always very taken by monkeys and apes. And I went to the zoo that was by our campus, the Henry Vilas Zoo. I went to UW-Madison, and there was an orangutan there. His name is Datu. I went on an off-peak hour, and I just sat right by the glass, just watching him, and I was just like, it's hard to describe those kinds of feelings with words because it feels like words don't provide the gravity of what you feel. And I just felt so, I wanted to know everything. I wanted to know everything. I couldn't believe I was watching this like creature that was like simultaneously so human, but obviously so animal. And it's like, what does that mean for us and how we fit into that? And how does this thing even exist? And like, what does it mean? And how long has it existed? There's so many questions. So just to clear up, like primates is an order. The way that we have cataloged all of the living species is through this taxonomic language. And so when I refer to primates, I'm referring to an order. And that's an umbrella term for apes, monkeys, and lemurs.
Okay.
Also, you have some others, but for the sake of simplicity, those are the main categories under primates.
Cool.
If it has a tail, it's a monkey.
Got it.
There is no ape that has a tail. So if it's a
Wow.
tail, if it has a tail,
That's so
it's
simple.
a monkey. And like anything, you know, when you're dealing with taxonomy, there's always going to be exceptions, which is why it's like annoying to be so pedantic about it because there's always exceptions. We're constantly changing it. People have arguments for everything. But keep it simple. The general rule of thumb, has a tail, it's a monkey.
Okay.
And there's also less apes. So if you're like confused, just remember all the apes. You have also great apes and lesser apes, but all of the apes, gorillas, chimpanzees, bonobos, orangutans, gibbons. Now, gibbons are the lesser known ape. They're considered small apes. And there's 20 different species of gibbon. They're the ones most confused for monkeys because they're tinier. But you're not going to confuse a chimpanzee, gorilla, bonobo, and orangutan. Those are the great apes. You know what I mean? And again, like gibbons too. Or everything else is monkey. Okay. Everything else is monkey, and there's hundreds of them. So many monkeys. So many species of monkey. It's crazy. And then lemurs, which all exist in Madagascar. So lemurs are isolated to the island of Madagascar naturally.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. I never even would have thought that a lemur is part of the...
But we share the order primates, and the degree of how related we are to them has to deal with when was the last time we shared a common ancestor. So the non-human primate that we're closest like related to would be a bonobo or a chimpanzee.
Okay.
And that's just based on genetic data, fossil data. It's called a phylogenetic map. Like you can see through the story that our DNA tells how recently we split from them.
Yeah. Wait, when did we split?
It's around 7 million years.
Okay.
But that's where primates come in that I find so interesting. I think that they're the best model. They're literally bridges, right? Like they're bridges from we love as humans to like reject our animalness. And the opportunity of apes and monkeys and like looking at non-human primates provides this like accessible bridge to help bring people that might not understand the value of animals and not have that connection to the natural world to invite, like offer them a passage that might make more sense to their mind. And this is important to state. I do believe that we are all like have that seed of caring about nature and the environment. And I think that we have various degrees of separation from that truth. And I think that the thing that really like was so tender to me about like primates was it offers such an easy path for people that might feel that separation to get back. Anybody that has gone to a zoo, and fewer people who have had the privilege to see, you know, like an ape in the wild or a monkey in the wild, like when you see that, you don't just like walk by, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It like stops you in your tracks, and it makes you think. And, you know, and I think that is a really valuable thing. And at the time when I tried, you know, like when I decided to study it and put my resources and time into it, like that is what drew me and kept me there. And I wanted to know everything. And I wanted to be able to explain that to people.
Right. No, that's really cool too. Because that's why they're my favorite animal at the zoo. Or like seeing like the apes specifically. I always have to like see them. Mainly because I'm just like, well, that looks like a person to me.
Yeah.
So it's like, I just like to watch them because I think they're fascinating. And okay, so now you have your master's in this. So then what do you like do after you get that?
Yeah, right. I mean, that was mainly like, that was the main question I got. I was like, well, how are you going to make money with that? Again, I felt supported by my friends and family because it would have been so easy for my parents to be like, that's a useless degree. And I had people tell me that. Like,
I don't think it's useless.
I don't
we
think
need
anything's
people,
useless.
Yeah.
No, listen, I don't think anything's useless, and especially a degree. Like, and when I graduated undergrad, I was like, well, I'm not done learning. I have no idea what I'm doing, and had the ability to go to grad school. That makes sense. Like, I'm not done learning about this, and I feel like I need more of an idea of what I can do with this information to turn it into a job. Like, do I want to do academia? Do I want to do research? Do I want to work at, in a big organization, a nonprofit? Like, what do I want to do with this?
Yeah.
And I needed more time, and I needed more guidance. And grad school felt like an obvious next step, and I was lucky enough to find a good fit, and I went to England, and I did my degree, and I completed my field research, and I wrote my dissertation, and I graduated, and I still didn't know what I wanted to do, but had the luck to be able to land a position with a nonprofit in New York City right out of grad school. So I went like pretty straight from grad school to this paid internship, which is like unheard of.
Rare.
I mean, this was a very unique organization that had a budget that most nonprofits do not have the luxury. So I very, very thankful. They're pretty private oriented. I'm not going to shout them out, but I'm really, really grateful to have found that. But they dealt with great ape conservation, right? Cool. And it was a communications position, which I felt like, again, the more logical side of my brain was like, I am not stupid. I know, like, I'm going to move to New York City. I'm not going to be able to get a job in like, there's, you know what I mean? There's certain kinds of like realistic, like, oh, I need to, figure out a way to like build a career that can help me like sustain myself. So I did that, and that was really great. COVID hit, right?
Yeah.
As my internship came to an end. And honestly, since then, which has been the last like 5 years, it was the last step that I had planned out in the phase of my life that was like the planning phase. I'd been able to like see my life up until then. And I've been operating under this evolution of like who I am and what my interests are. And I think that the hyperfixation on primates got me into it and saw me through. And now it's so much broader based on being a person in this world and experiencing. And part of my problem was going into my, like after my master's, do I want to do my PhD? Well, you need to decide an even nicher topic.
Yeah.
You need to know, like, do you want to study breastfeeding and gorilla behavior? You need to know.
Yeah.
And I had no degree of certainty at that point, which I think was a nudge. Like, I just also felt very disillusioned by academia in the sense of like, academia has created this culture of like, the paper is key. The paper is God. That is your money. That is your meal ticket. If you are not willing to sign up for a life of chasing publications, it's not the place for you.
Yeah.
And I loved the idea of being able to be a professor, and I loved the idea, but the road that it took to get to be a professor seemed like something that I was unwilling to do, or like that my everything.
That's fair, yeah.
So, and I think that's for a reason. And it's not like I could never go back, but I needed, something was pushing me to go out in the world. And I've worked, like with this nonprofit a bunch and seen, like nonprofits are really hard because, they have their own frustrations, as does every field. But I've been a wildlife educator. I really, really enjoy seeing how, people engage and learn with this, like, with this thing that is like a part of us, but so far away. So right now, I told you before this, like I just signed up for an urban tree fellowship, and I'm very interested in the things that, because I think that if you study an animal, right, like it is, you can't not have an appreciation for like the environment that it comes in.
Yeah.
And so right now I've kind of shifted to like wider environment and like, like things like trees.
I think that's great. But also, like you said before, like it is like you have that interest and it'll kind of steer you in that direction. So like, I guess also your lack of interest and getting even more narrow into that is steering you in a different direction, which I think is really cool. My hyperfixation is And Just Like That, which is the spin-off of Sex and the City. And you said you just finished the series.
I just had the pleasure of finishing it.
I can't stop watching it, but it's really bad. And I don't know if like the main reason that it's different is like Darren Star was the original like creator of the show with Michael Patrick King, and Darren Star is not a part of And Just Like That. And neither is Kim Cattrall. Samantha's not in it either. It's too much to go into like every single thing, but it's in its third season now. And I have this like ritual now where like every Thursday it comes out and I will like take an edible and watch it. And then I have to watch it again. And then I go on Reddit and read all of the comments.
Yeah,
'cause
get the tea. Yeah.
Everyone is like upset about something because they just are really missing. Everyone feels kind of like a caricature of their original characters on the OG show. Well, because Carrie ends up with Big. And then they're married.
And then they kill
And
him.
then they kill him the very first episode, which I thought was coordinated with possibly because like sexual assault allegations came out about Chris Noth right around the time that they killed him. I don't know if they did that on purpose. And it was like, at first it felt kind of nice because like Big dies, so Carrie is single because the show kind of functions on, for the most part, single women's lives. And she moves back into her old apartment that she had in the original series. And you're kind of like, all right, great. We're going to like see her dating again in midlife, which is exciting. And then they pretty quickly in like season 2, she gets back together with Aiden. And I used to be such a big Aiden fan, and now I hate him. Well, there wasn't a lot of time of her grieving Mr. Big. She wrote a memoir about his death that they kind of like cover in a couple episodes. And then she like moves on pretty quickly to Aiden and says something like, I think Big was a big mistake. Aiden's the love of my life. But no, Aiden's not the love of your life because you tried this twice. In the original series.
And how frustrating for an audience to see you in midlife and feel like you haven't made any progress
I was like,
with
you
decentering.
you started dating Aiden and then cheated on him with Mr. Big and then got back together with Aiden. And then when he tried to propose to you, you vomited and like you physically could not be in a relationship with him.
Yeah.
So why all of a sudden, Carrie, when you're in your 50s, does it make sense that Aiden's actually the love of your life? I'm like, just write a new character. So they bring Aiden back and they immediately too fall into a relationship essentially. She like sends him an email or something stupid. But he lives in Virginia and with his 3 sons and his now ex-wife, Kathy. Essentially, they leave off season 2. They have one problem child, Wyatt, who has ADHD and has a lot of issues. That's,
I'm
again,
sure great for the community.
yeah. And so they leave off the end of season 2 with Aiden just being like, I got to be in Virginia with my family because Aiden gets in like an accident or something. And he's like, just give me 5 years until my kids are not teens anymore. And then we can be in a relationship.
Sure, yeah.
And Carrie's like, okay. And then the boundaries and the rules and the parameters around this arrangement shift every episode. Because I think the writers, I think I was reading like behind the scenes, they were gonna be like, all right, bye Aiden, and they're like, never mind, we want Aiden back in it. Like it's a writer, like because it's undefined and it's stupid.
The point is not telling a good story, unfortunately.
Yes.
And it's like these writers don't know if it's gonna get picked up for another season, whatever the contract is. And so no wonder that the product, them doing the best they can, is this shallow, fragmented writing.
Shallow is like the perfect word for it. Even just like on like all of the scenes feel like only 30 seconds long. We don't see any buildup. We feel like each character just kind of hits a milestone, but you don't really see any before or after. And that's kind of like across the board with all of the characters. But the Aiden thing is like so frustrating because basically he's like, don't talk to me for 5 years. Carrie sells her old apartment because Aiden can't step foot in there because because of the bad memories.
That has been ripped away from her.
So she sells this apartment, buys like a mansion in Gramercy Park because she has all of Big's money because he died. And then was like, she's not furnishing it really. She's like waiting for him. But I'm like, girl, you have like 5 years. And so they weren't communicating. And then all of a sudden he'd call her horny and be like, let's have phone sex. And then she was like, can I text you about like the rats in my backyard? Or should I not talk to you? And he's like, no, you can text me about the rats. And you're like, it's so all over the place. So then she goes down to Virginia. And his ex-wife, Kathy, calls Carrie to be like, hey, can you bring Adderall down? Because there's a shortage and we can't get any, and our kid Wyatt needs Adderall. And so Carrie is just kind of like, all right, and then asks Charlotte, and Charlotte gets some. First of all, that's like a felony. Like, you can't just get loose Adderall and then like take it. That's illegal. But the whole like Carrie bringing Adderall down, so then she does, gives it to Aiden. Aiden's weird about it.
How old is the son, Wyatt?
13, 14 maybe. He's like a teen, like a young teen. And it just was revealed that Aiden's a horrible father. So Aiden doesn't believe in medicating his kids. So he does not want to give Wyatt Adderall. And he wants him to paint the house all the time and like send him off to wilderness camp.
Oh, right. That'll build the...
Yeah. I was like, okay, RFK Jr.
Yeah, no, truly.
Okay, send your kid to
Eat
like
some bear meat. Like.
Yeah, it's nuts. And so I'm like, Carrie, this is the moment you're going to dump Aiden because he's a bad dad to his kid. He like over coddles him, makes him do physical labor, and instead of getting him like real help or let him take medication he's prescribed. No, she doesn't dump him. And then like this most recent episode, I'm like losing my mind because this is also funny because like Wyatt has ADHD and like has issues with like emotional regulation. And Aiden, I feel like I'm convinced Aiden also has ADHD because
that's how it
works.
Yeah.
And in the most recent episode, Aiden went to like visit her in New York, and their thing is to like throw pebbles at the window. And he throws a pebble and breaks Carrie's window of her like old school mansion in Gramercy Park. He breaks the window and she's like, well, it's special glass. It makes this rainbow. You can't just replace it. And so he's like up all night online looking up vintage doors with glass. And she's like, come to bed. And he's like, no, I got to find the right glass for you. And then the next day leaves and drives out to Pennsylvania to pick out a bunch of doors with glass to try to replace the exact same glass of the one that he broke. And I'm like, Aiden, you have ADHD also.
Yeah.
That is such a hyper-focused, like, I got to fix it. And then he's like, none of the glass is perfect. None of it makes a rainbow.
Right, cannot sit with his mistake.
Cannot sit with his mistake. Well, and then it's revealed that he had sex with his ex-wife, Kathy, right before going to see Carrie. And then Carrie's response, literally, I was like, fight, finally, a fight. Do something. The first words out of her mouth, I understand. So the whole subreddit is up in arms being like, Carrie, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
Dump him. And again, the season's not resolved yet. And I'm like, it's frustrating because I think as like a viewer, we're just meant to feel a certain way about him.
Yeah.
But now I'm questioning, I'm like, maybe Michael Patrick King thinks that his take on like not letting his kid take Adderall or things like that, like people would
Is correct.
People would sympathize with him or empathize with him, and at least from my friends and the subreddit, everyone's like, "What the fuck is this show?"
Yeah.
So I'm just been deeply involved in that, and obviously get very worked up about it because it's ruined the character Aiden for me.
Well, and it's funny how it is so interesting to me to be so aware of my own like mental condition and my response to TV and movies in particular. I've really come under like looking at that a lot because I've noticed how much it takes out of me to watch, how invested, how attached I get watching a movie or any form of visual storytelling.
Yeah.
I seem to not have the ability that I see everybody else have to like sit down and just watch something. It's like I need to know what I'm watching because I know that I'll get so invested and lose myself in the narratives and treat it like it's playing out in real life. And obviously when I sit down and watch a TV show, I know I'm not there, but to my brain, it really feels like these situations are playing out in front of me.
Yeah.
And so the resolution does feel urgent sometimes. And when things like that happen, when someone reacts in such like a unsettling way, or is like being like neglectful of a child, like when these things happen on screen, it like my brain really it reacts with real emotions.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting because
it's frustrating because I'm the same way. I'm just like, realistically, it doesn't make sense in like this world, in any world, like it doesn't line up.
And I need to know if the writers are, if this is intentional and if it's worth giving my energy or like critique to. Even in the span of this conversation, it's like I see so clearly I'm trying to ascertain some level of like control or understanding.
Yeah.
So it's like so interesting because these scenarios that play out and like in this show that is so flawed and they seem to be writing it by the skin of their teeth every episode.
I mean, apparently they think, so this is the next phase of this like fixation of mine that it's also one of those things where I'm like, I have to get these things off my plate and then I can give this my full attention, there is a podcast of the writers.
Okay.
And from my understanding, they think they're doing like a good job. So that's
putting perspectives out there and seeing them will give the audience the ability to you decide the truth.
That's my next level of this is like really locking in on these podcast episodes because I am also just very curious on a lot of decisions. But we have to close up for time.
Man, yeah.
I can't wait. I may have to like redo this again once the season ends because
I would love a check back in.
I need to know. Yeah, I just like at first I thought Aiden's out, and now I'm like maybe Aiden is gonna just be in the show forever. We'll see. But thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much.
I learned
this was
a
amazing.
lot about primates today. Deborah Davidson is a New York City-based producer and primatologist, and you can follow her at Deb Davids on Instagram. We'll link that in the show notes. You can also follow this show at Hyperfocus Comedy for updates on podcast episodes and live shows in New York. There's also a Patreon if you would like to support this whole thing. I would appreciate it. And thank you for listening. I'm Virginia Dickens, and this has been Hyperfocus, a neurodivergent podcast.